I was unfaithful through our entire marriage.
You shared your story, and I remember thinking, like, what? Like, I had no idea that you were such a dirtbag.
It's funny. I feel like I was that person that was like, this will never happen to me.
It's crazy, but it like goes all the way to the Garden of Eden. You sin and then you hide.
Okay, I put it in the same category as pornography. Like, I don't know who these women are, but something that happens is you become a professional hider.
I will have a testimony. I just don't know what it's going to be. I pick her up and I go into our bathroom and I'm just like weeping before the Lord. I'm like, okay, now I don't know what to do.
And she just stopped me and she goes, Clay, she's like, it's fine. That needed to happen. And I just remember thinking like, oh boy.
I could almost feel a distance even whenever we were first married.
She couldn't understand how could I possibly do this. For the first time in my life, like I was at the end of me.
How did you find real freedom?
So
today, I'm going to be talking to some of my friends that went from multiple affairs to pastoring. Today, we're going to be addressing how your testimony pleases the Lord. Let's get after it. This is Spiritual Leadership, where we're helping leaders become spiritual leaders. So we're here with the Ingrams. I love your guys' stinking guts. You guys are the campus pastors of Mercy Culture Dallas, doing a phenomenal job. It's one of my favorite campuses to go preach at. I think I say it about all my campuses. But no, I do. I love it. I love what God's doing in Dallas, and you guys are thriving. I remember when the Lord spoke to the elders about you guys being the campus pastors, and that first conversation I had with you about it, and you're like, are you sure? No. How come? Are you sure? And I remember when you said it to me, I was like, I would much rather be with a leader that I was like, no, we are sure God spoke to us, than a leader that's like, no, I got this in the bag. This is good to go. And you guys have literally flourished in everything you've ever touched at Mercy Culture. I remember faithfully serving together, sweating our brains out in high schools together,
Yes.
setting up and tearing down. And now you're leading the Dallas campus. It's thriving. What's it like to lead the Dallas campus?
it's on. So it really is crazy to think about our meeting at Snooze. And I was so irritated that you would ask us to do such a thing. And I always reflect on the first time I was asked to do pre-service prayer at Mercy Culture. And that was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done in my life. I was literally thinking about it because I didn't want to pray in front of people. And so it's just funny to think that we're leading a campus, we're a year in, and God's just been so faithful. It's like we've been in different places, and He's just been so faithful with His presence, and I truly have enjoyed. I've never said this. Sorry for anyone that I've worked with in the past, but I've just never truly loved what I've been doing, and God's just been so faithful. It's so fun. His presence is there every week, and so I don't know.
I feel like what's so fun is like, even whenever you first ask, it's like, no, we have no idea what we're doing. Still the case. But I think what's so beautiful is like, he said the Lord shows up every time, and it's like He really is the one building His church.
Yeah.
And so it's just such an honor. Like, it really is. I might need the tissues. But I'm like, it is such an honor. God has been so good to us.
I feel the same way. And some people can try to say the right thing to sound good, but we really, really mean it. Like, His presence is there. I mean, there's not a time I've been to the Dallas campus where I'm not on my knees, because that's what I do when I feel the presence of God, or I bring my boys with me and they're on their knees worshiping. Last time I was there ministering, I look over and your daughter's on the front row worshiping with all of her heart, and just, it blessed me so much. Just the testimonies, the lives, the leaders, the things that God's doing in Dallas is just unbelievable. And you guys are amazing leaders. You've literally just flourished everything. I mean, like, you guys got hands of gold. Like, everything you've ever touched at Mercy Culture, you've been faithful and you've been successful. And then when the Lord spoke to us about you guys planting the campus, it was just like, yes, like the Lord highlighted you. The elders were in complete unity and agreement. It took you guys a little while to say yes. But no,
a few confirmations.
Yeah. You need 362. But it's been amazing. It's been amazing. And you guys are dynamic leaders. And sometimes people look at leaders and they're like, man, they're perfect. Man, they were raised in this. Man, they're so good at this. They're just so gifted. And they have no idea what's behind the scenes. And a testimony is a powerful thing. And I feel like anything that really pleases the Lord, the enemy really resists. Yeah. And he attacks it because it's so powerful. So Revelation says that we're set free by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So the blood of the Lamb is how Jesus defeated Satan. And the word of our testimony is how we defeat Satan. And there's so many Christians that are losing in spiritual warfare because they allow the enemy to convince them not to testify. And so you guys have a wild story. It's a radical story, and it's a powerful story. And I want to share your story. And when we say a testimony, we're really just talking about God encounters. And it's important for everybody that listens. A testimony isn't how bad you were. In Clay, in your case, it's how bad you were. That's not what a testimony is about. A testimony is about how good God is.
Yes.
And so as we talk about this, we're really talking about the goodness of God, the mercy of God, the grace of God, and what God can do as we have messed up our lives when we're submitted to him, what he can do through our lives. And so most people just see you, and I love this because it's the same thing with Heather. People see her and they're like, man, what an amazing leader. You must have just been raised in this your whole life. And people know that she was a teenage drug addict, alcoholic, overdosing on Oxycontin as a teenager. They don't realize her story. And Clay, they see you as this dynamic spiritual leader, but they have no idea that you are a serial adulterer and almost losing everything, betraying your wife, betraying your family, and playing the church game, but living in a perverted, demonic lifestyle. What happened? How did you get into a place where you are living this double life and living a life of perversion and immorality? What happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but I would say, I had a normal upbringing. Like if anyone should have done things right, I feel like it should have been me. Like I grew up in church. I didn't have a bad childhood. Like both of my parents were there and they loved me. I went to all the things, they were at all the games. But as young as I can remember, I just always remember there being just like a fleshly appetite. And I honestly don't even remember the first time that I was exposed to pornography, but I remember multiple times as a child just being exposed to things and just like me in my innocence seeing something and it just almost like a hook in my flesh. And like, I've never felt that before. And like, how do I get that again? How do I experience that again? And it honestly started innocently like that. And then you bring that up through middle school. It's like I was always just chasing girls. I always just had a fascination with women. Into high school, me and my football friend, like we joined choir so we could be by the pretty girls and go on choir tour and go on vacation with the pretty girls. It's like it was just always a fascination. Pornography was always a struggle. And then you bring that into college and it just continued to go deeper and deeper and deeper. But I was committed. I grew up in church. I know the right answers. I know about purity. I know that I'm not supposed to have sex before marriage. And it's like, I did that one thing. I withheld that one thing. I didn't have sex before marriage. I did everything else and was addicted to pornography. And so, but I really believed that like, okay.
Which is wild because people are like, no, this is what purity is.
Yeah.
Why I can compromise in all these other areas.
Yes.
And really it's like, it's religion.
Yes.
Where you are making for yourself right standing with God rather than it's something that's really purity of heart.
Yeah.
I legitimately believed that I would find my wife. Yes, I've done everything else with lots of different people, but I have not actually had sex. So I'm going to find this woman, and then I will be able to finally have sex with a woman, and then
temptation leaves.
Yeah, we're good. All these things, all these problems are just gone.
What the truth is marriage doesn't change that, it just magnifies
Yes.
who you really are.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys get married, you fall in love. What happens?
I would say so I moved down to Dallas, and Lindsey was already living here. She went to Oklahoma State. I went to Texas Tech University, the greatest university in America. I just had to say that. So I moved down here. Lindsey, I don't know, she's working in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living in Euless, working with started a medical equipment company with a friend. And it's like living by myself. It's like all these things that are just unchecked, struggles that I have in my life, they're just being magnified.
Mm-hmm.
And so something else that beyond pornography is I moved down here and I started going to massage parlors, like transacting for sexual things. But it's like I almost thought that, okay, I put it in the same category as pornography. Like, I don't know who these women are. Like, it's not, this isn't going to affect us. And this is all going to be taken care of when we finally get married. So we get married in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things, it's like we get married and I thought that it would all stop, and it probably did for a season, but it's like it all came back. And so we're living together. I'm still struggling with pornography. I'm going to massage parlors, but I'm also seeing lots of success financially within business. And you can speak to how things were going, but it's almost like we were checking all the boxes. We went to a good church. We're part of marriage groups and doing all the things. Like, I have the head knowledge. I've grown up in church, but I just have a double life, and things are just completely out of control on a personal level.
So how long were you married before you had an affair for the first time?
So I was unfaithful through our entire marriage, just because of all the stuff I was doing when our marriage started. But so we got married in 2009, and then in 2012, that was the first time I'm traveling all the time for business, and I don't have accountability, but 2012 was the first time something happened between me and another woman. I actually entered into like a physical affair. And then that went on for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was unfaithful for the first 8 years of our marriage.
There is one way to God, and it's through Jesus. But in Jesus, there are many ways to connect with him. You can commune with him while creating, denying your flesh and feeding your spirit, ministering to his heart through worship, meditating on scripture, getting alone to be with him, meeting with him in creation, asking him questions and listening for his response, learning something new about him, moving into an encounter with him, making the crooked ways straight, serving his people, remembering what he has done. Your daily encounters with God change everything. Discover how you connect with God. Text encounter to 59090 to take your Connect with God assessment today.
So this is wild, okay? Just so everybody that's listening, you're going to a good church. You're part of small groups. You're married for 8 years. You're starting to have children at this time. And you're literally living this double life. What was going on in you in this season? Did you have any clue? Were you discerning something? Were you think you're going crazy?
It's funny. I feel like I was that person that was like, this will never happen to me. It honestly was not even in my mind. I really did not know. I feel like looking back in hindsight, I can even think about when we first got married, feeling like even like within our physical intimacy, thinking like, oh, I thought it was going to be different. Like I could almost feel a distance even whenever we were first married, but I didn't know, and especially whenever you're coming to the marriage, I'm like, well, I guess I don't know what it's supposed to be like. Like maybe this is normal. It's just not what I thought it was going to be. And so again, it was one of those things, I knew that he sort of struggled with pornography. It's funny, again, going to this great church, we're part of small groups, we're in them. We would split up into like girls and guys groups, and talk. And then we would come back and I'd be like, oh, what'd you guys talk about?
The struggle.
And that's literally what he says. He's like,
just the struggle.
It's the struggle.
Everybody deals with it,
So in my mind, and I think even growing up, it's like almost like pornography was normalized in the sense of like men struggle with it. Like it's not okay, but so it was kind of this, that was like, all I really knew was like, it was a struggle, but almost like I was like, oh, he's fighting it. It happens sometimes, like that's normal kind of thing. And then let's see, a few years into that too, I did have a dream actually. And in the dream, he had an affair with this woman. And again, it's funny, the next morning I kind of start telling him about it. And I was like, I had this crazy dream. And he was so weird about it, right? But again, I mean,
she read my mail.
Yeah, literally. I was like, hey, I had this dream.
She had the dream about the person.
The person.
I was like, what did you dream about?
Wow.
Yeah, about the person, that kind of how it got exposed. But yeah, in it, he was like, tell me about the dream. Tell me. And I was like, no, like I'm not, what do you want to know about the dream? Like, what details do you want to know about the dream? It was this weird thing. Again, I was just so like, I don't know. I just thought, he was this great Christian guy like that. It really was for me, like it would never happen. He would never do that. Yeah.
How did you hide it for so long?
I mean, my whole life, and that's the thing is like you look at pornography and you can almost classify it as this thing that's just affecting me. But something that happens is you become a professional hider. Like you just learn how to. I think there is initially a sensitivity with your consciousness when you're doing those things, but then it's seared over time, and you just learn how to go to a certain place. Here comes this extreme guilt and shame. Give me like a day and a worship song and a quiet time, and I can kind of put that in the back compartments, and then I can turn towards my family and smile and try to maintain other things. It's wild in hindsight, how I learned to function in such a high level of dysfunction. But it's crazy. It's stressful. Like I would go on business trips and things would happen, and just coming home, it's almost like I had a process over 12 to 24 hours where I could reset and like somehow turn my heart back towards my kids and my family, and like stuff some shame and some guilt and some condemnation because of the grace of God, which is true, but it's like I just was never honest with it. And so I can only describe it as it's a double life. Like I legitimately love my children. I love my daughters. Like I wanted to be in our marriage, but yet I couldn't stop all the things that I was doing. And I just learned how to compartmentalize and live both ways.
So 8 years of this, it's nonstop. It's who you are. You're living a double hypocritical life. What brought this out in the open?
I wish it was because I just had this God encounter and just felt like I was supposed to come and confess, and it wasn't like that for us. I was pushed to a point where I had to, because there was going to be consequences. So there was one of the boundaries that I had is I had done things with coworkers, but one of the boundaries that I had was that I never did anything with people that like reported to me.
Isn't it weird how you can have boundaries in perversion?
Yes.
You have boundaries in immorality. We're like, okay, well, I'm drawing the line here as you're betraying your vows, your wife.
Yeah.
But you have these things set up. Okay, so you have this boundary set up.
Yeah. And I mean, I had a whole list of structures of how you hide things, how you delete things, like when I'm coming home from it, just like how it all functions, how my dysfunction functions. And so anyways, it was an employee that was working for me, and we were traveling together, like her first week of employment at a conference. Something happened between us, like on her first week of employment. That was a single event. And then fast forward, 6-8 months, she's not doing well as an employee, and the board members, I'm an executive at this medical equipment company, and our board members are coming to me saying, hey, this needs to change. If it doesn't change, we just gotta, we gotta part ways here. And so I'm going down this path of, I kind of had that in the back of my mind, like, no, surely that thing that happened wouldn't be a problem in this scenario. And so we worked through a performance plan, and it didn't get better. The situation didn't get better. And so I was going to have that conversation about parting ways. And in that moment, she basically was saying, I need this and this and this, and I'll peacefully go. And if I don't get it, then, I'm going to make life hard for you and hard for the company. And so I tried to manipulate for about a month and tried to broker a deal with our CEO without being honest, just like, hey, as I do this, I feel like she could be litigious. Like, we probably just want to be kind, and he's in agreement. Like, yeah, let's help her out. Let's part ways. This is going to be peaceful. And then last minute, I remember where I was. I was in Cincinnati on a business trip, and I had a deal brokered. Like, I'm like, we're going to be good. She's going to be good, and everything's good.
You hit it once again.
I got it.
You got away with it.
I got it. And then I have a conversation with the CEO of our company, and he's like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't feel like we're supposed to do this. Like, and he basically goes back on everything that we had agreed on. And I'm like, oh. And so I traveled back. I remember it was a Thursday, and I walked straight into his office, and it was the first time that he's the first person that I told. And I just said, hey, here's what is actually happening. My life is out of control. And then that night, I came home. I went to a men's summit at my church and I was like, can I come here and get right with God, and this can be over with? And then I knew I had to tell Lindsey that night because I didn't know what was going to happen. And so that was enough in my pride. I finally got caught, and I went home that night and I told Lindsey.
What was going through your mind?
The one. He told me about the one, which this is the one that I had the dream about. I think the thing I think about too is, it's actually funny. He said that it happened that one time, but the next morning, I guess during breakfast, he went to go kind of like say something about it, like whatever, that shouldn't have happened. I don't know. And she
like we went to breakfast together, and I was eating a smoothie bowl, just started to acknowledge what happened. And she just stopped me and she goes, Clay, she's like, it's fine. That needed to happen. And I just remember thinking like, oh boy.
Wow.
I even feel like those words felt so prophetic on that happening. So kind of was saying, like, during our marriage, I really didn't know what was going on, but our marriage was distant. Like, it became distant. It became very pretend. Like, we would go out and be social. We would do all the things. Like I said, we'd go to the groups. We would lead the groups. We were literally taking all the classes at church every Sunday. We're doing all the things, but at home, it's like we just were not really connecting. It's like we were slowly over those 8 years, like drifting. I mean, we would come home at night. We would literally sit on the couch, watch TV on separate sides of the couch, and then just go to bed. So it's like our marriage was just slowly had been deteriorating. So that night that he came, I feel like I had gotten to this place where I was like very numb in our marriage anyways. And also, not only that, so back up 9 months, our closest friends were actually going through infidelity. And so I'm basically talking to this friend of mine, I mean, all the time, like daily for hours. I'm like contending, warring for her marriage. We're praying for her spouse. I'm going over to her home. We're like praying over her home that her marriage would be restored and all these things, right? So it's like for literally 9 months, I'm like warring that this can, like that God can do anything. Like, do you know who all those things. So he comes home and he tells me about the one. So I say that to say, like, I was kind of numb, but almost like, oh, like, okay, I guess God can fix this. He sits me on the couch. He's like, I need to tell you something. He says, I was unfaithful 6 months ago one time. And so I was just like, okay. I was like, I don't even know what I said. I literally was like, okay, I'm going to get up and go to bed. And like, I literally,
it was the most surprising reaction, because to come home to just anybody you can imagine, like, or can't imagine, like telling your spouse that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I was expecting, but she just, I walked in, she flipped off the lights and she's like, I'm going to bed. And I was like, hold on. And then I just told her, and then it was like a numb response. Like she's like, almost like, I don't even know what to say or do with you right now. I'm going to bed. And I was just
I
like,
really didn't.
what do I do right now? And, but I just told her about the one that night.
So we go to bed. Again, I'm almost like, what am I supposed to do? You don't really know what to do in this scenario. You don't picture yourself in it. And so I was like, well, I need a book, obviously, like that's what I need to find some sort of book. So I found some sort of book, and, over the next couple of days, I don't even know, honestly, I feel like they were kind of a blur. Like the next 2 days.
So
were a little bit
I
of a
continued
blur.
on at the men's conference. This is my escape. I'm just like, okay, I don't know what to do. So,
Yeah.
but it was on a Saturday of the men's con. It just finished, and I go and work out, and I'm coming home, and I remember when I was working out, like, what about everything else? And I felt like this is the first time, like I felt the Lord speak to me in just as this was happening. And
Baptist boy, hearing God.
I know, right? I didn't even know that was a thing. But he just said, if she asks, just tell her.
So while he's at the gym, I'm reading this book, and the book is like, what you need to think about is what else you want to ask him. Like, what else what do you need to know? And so literally, as soon as he walks in from the gym and sits down, I say, I need to know if you have anything else you need to tell me. I
had a peace offering of 2 coffees, and I walk in, the door opens, and she just hits me with that. And I'm just like,
and he was like,
and then I just started
word vomiting all of the things.
All of the, not all the things.
Yeah, he actually did withhold a cup. There were actually 2 other times. Don't do that. Don't do that. No need to withhold anything else. So anyways, he's dumping years of all the things, all the times, telling me people that like I knew. And like just, so at that point, that's whenever I felt like I really just like shattered. Our youngest is 11 weeks old. She's sitting there she's sitting there with me. I pick her up and I go into our bathroom, and I'm just like weeping before the Lord. I'm like, okay, now I don't know what to do. And it's like, I feel like that's whenever I truly brought it before the Lord, even to be like, Lord, like I am like, what is happening? What do I do? And it's funny. Like I even remember it was that moment that I like heard the Lord say, like he whispered to me, stay. And I was like, it was this like, well, like how long, like, what does that even mean? What does stay mean? And
you have a biblical out.
Well, yeah. Oh, and honestly, you know what? Because I was saying, it's like the way our marriage was, it was almost like part of me felt like this relief. Like I felt almost stuck in our marriage because it had gotten to this such distant place that I was like, I'm stuck. Like, this is all it is. Like, this is what our life is going to be. Like, we're just growing. I feel like we're just going through all the motions. And it was like, we're doing all the things, living this like American dream, And it was almost like him doing this, like, when him just telling me the one, it was almost like this, some sort of like relief too, where it was like, oh, I'm not stuck anymore.
What'd you feel like when the Lord said stay?
I feel like I truly was like, what does that mean? Like, how long, what does it mean to stay? And it was almost like this, I immediately just felt like the Lord wasn't even saying like stay forever, but I felt like he was saying stay right now. And then it's like from there, I feel like this like manipulation starts coming in where I'm like, well, I got to go for a little bit, Lord, because then how will he know what he's missing? Like, I've got to take his kids away for a little bit. Like, he has to know what it's like without, almost like I'm like having these conversations with the Lord of like, if I don't, like, I have to do the things that would be natural to do in the situation, what I would picture someone to do. And even in that, the Lord was like, literally, he's like, Lindsey, he was like, what would be like the outcome that you would desire out of this? And I was like, well, Lord, the ideal outcome is that like you would heal us, set him free, like you would reconcile our marriage. And I feel like the Lord was like, take steps to do that. Don't separate, don't push him out. I was like, do I kick him out? All these things. And he was like, take steps towards what your desire is here. And like, almost as if the Lord was like, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance.
What were you thinking when she's in the bathroom weeping?
I don't know what to do. Like I'm just, the beautiful thing about all of this is that for the first time in my life, like I was at the end of me, manipulation, like just trying to control everything. Cause you get to that moment and it's like, I can't do anything right now. Like I'm about to potentially lose everything and I can't do anything about it. And he just, I feel like we were in the same house, just kind of walking past each other, like trying to do our best to put on a face to just function with our kids. But yet we don't really have any idea of like what we're doing. Like, what do we even say to each other? One, we do. I feel like for that season, we didn't even know how to communicate, but what we would do is we would go to a coffee shop in South Lake and we would play board games. Our kids would play in the corner and we would literally compete. We didn't know how to talk to each other, but we did know how to compete against each other and play board games. And that was like a part of our process and healing, because it's like we didn't know what to do.
But also, like, so I feel like I said, the first part, I was like, okay, I probably just read a book and we'll kind of get through it. But after that second time, like, I called our church and I was like, hey, do you have anything for this? Like, what, like, I don't know what to do and I don't really know where to turn. I don't know, like, there's got to be something for this. And they were like, oh, and mind you, we've been at this church for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, never had heard of anything for this. And they're like, oh yeah, we've got a class. It meets on, was it Tuesday nights? And relevant, but it's like meets on Tuesday nights. You can come to the next one. So we're like, okay, I was like, we're going to this thing. We're going to start going to this class.
I remember I didn't know what to do, except I was like, I got to tell everybody. I got to tell the boys.
I also felt like that.
And our men in our small group were having the men were having like a gathering, like a fire pit or something. And I was like, I'm going to tell them what happened. I don't know. I was waiting for like a God moment, like God just strike me, just heal me. Like, I just need a moment. I don't want to work through anything. I just need a moment, change everything. And so I went and I told all these guys that were gathering, I was just like, here's what happened. And then I disappeared and I never went back.
But
it's
you
funny.
Didn't tell them everything that
I didn't
happened.
tell
You were
them
kind of
everything.
like, will you pray for me?
Yeah. And these guys are like, okay. And it's funny. One of them goes to Mercy Culture and we didn't reconnect that entire time until I saw him here. He's like, what happened
How
when
did you become a
left
pastor of a church?
Yeah.
Do they know?
And so it's funny how it's worked out.
So it gets exposed. You start going to classes. When did change, healing, deliverance start? What happened?
So I feel like there was a specific, because I'm still numb. I've been caught. There's some walls that come down in that. But I did a very poor job. If we didn't have leadership pushing us and pressing into me, there would still be aspects of our testimony that were still in hiding, because I was still doing this thing. Okay, 80% of it. And when you've been in hiding your entire life, it's like you want to, I say it like you still want to put a bow around this turd and make it look presentable. And sorry, that's might not be the right way to say it, but it's like you want to present your best self, even with all the
even though you already
craziness
don't
that's
look
going
good.
on. Yeah.
It's bad. It could be worse.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I was withholding a couple of individuals, and those were intense, almost what I thought were going to be breaking moments when I told her the reality with this person or that person, and some of those final details.
And what made those ones harder than the rest? Because
it's like the height of dysfunction. So people that were close,
deeper betrayal.
Yes. And it's like, it was just like the highest level. It's one thing to tell her names of people that she doesn't know, but when you start getting into details of our life that she's been intertwined with, and she knows these people, and it's like these people have been like in our house.
And not only that, like in our, like a couple months into, like maybe not even a couple, just like about a month into it, like I met one of them, even like, that was actually, I think the first, like I knew about her and I knew that he worked with her. And so I'd heard her name a lot, but I actually like met her face to face.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was.
What brought you to be 100% honest? What was the 80 to 100% process? How long did that take? And what did that take?
Yeah. So we started going through like a marriage intensive, and we had an intense couple that was mentoring us. And the husband, he's like an ex-cop, and the wife is an attorney. I mean, these are intense people.
You got
They were
interrogated.
people that I needed in my life.
You needed that.
And
Which is interesting because when some people have intense leadership, they back away.
Yeah.
When sometimes the intense leadership is what you need.
Yes. And so there was this part in our process where we did a timeline. And this timeline is literally going, because you develop like a mechanism where I can forget things. Like if you were to ask me like how many people, I couldn't even begin to tell you because I had forgotten things over the years because just being in hiding. And so in this process, you go back into hotel records, bank records, and you develop a full timeline of who, what, where, when, all the things. And in that process, I laid it all out. And the thing is like, it's just something that you have to do. If anything is hiding, it's almost like the whole thing doesn't work if you leave. And the thing is like at this point, why would you go 98% of the way and leave one out?
It's crazy, but it like goes all the way to the Garden of Eden. Like you sin and then you hide.
Yes.
And there's this thing in people to just don't come out, don't come out. And it's an attack of the enemy because freedom is on the other side of that honesty.
Yes.
Where God's saying, where are you? Where in your dysfunction, in your shame, he's looking for you, but people have to reveal. What was it like in the waves of honesty? Because I could assume it would feel like how many more times are you going to lie? How many times? Or did you ever want to give up in that season of the 80% honesty to 100% honesty?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like, I mean, it really does. It feels like this is a sucker punch. Is that the right way to say it? It really is. Like, feels like it like takes the air out of you, especially after, you know, the one time and then the just dump of so much. And then it was like about another month went by and he like let the other one out. And then it's like, it's honestly like, it's such a confusing time, especially in the middle of like your brain is trying to reconcile what has been happening for the past 8 years. You're like, wait, what I thought was real wasn't even real. Like what was, like, I'm even navigating, you know, he's especially giving me this timeline of things of like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, what was I doing? Oh, I remember some of those trips I would text him. He wouldn't text me back, you know, like kind of just navigating like what this all happened like in all those years. So I feel like each time it really was going back every time, like going back to the Lord on like, Lord, what are we doing? What do you want? What are you saying? It was like, I mean, it really, I feel like it was almost like for the first time, I feel like I was encountering Jesus. Like I had never encountered him like that before. And so I just feel like, yeah, each time it was like, okay, Lord, what are we doing? There was one of the times. So again, it was kind of, I would say there were 4. So it was like the first time, the big one. And then there was like another one and then like one other one. And that last time I was like, I'm taking the girls to Sonic, as if like I was like, I need to get away from you for a little bit. Like, I don't know what to do. But each time it's like the Lord was like, I don't know, he just would bring me back, I feel like, to himself. And it was, again, within that, we're in the class, we're in the intensive, we're making like steps of progress. I've also got, you know, again, I don't know she's gone from 11 weeks to maybe 15, 20 weeks. She's still like this nursing infant, almost like I'm telling myself things like, well, you know, we'll see how it goes. Like we're still just kind of going to walk this out. Like so it's like, while he's like kicking me back, we're still making steps of progress. It just feels like each time he's starting over. And the thing is like healing really cannot happen until you're fully out in the open. So it's like, if freedom can't happen, healing can't happen until it's all out there. And so really it feels like we weren't even able to begin to heal and build until it all came out.
What was the number one attack the enemy was doing on you in this season?
Yeah.
What do you feel like the strategy the enemy was on you as you're entertaining the levels of his dishonesty?
Yeah. It's actually funny because I bet, I mean, it would probably be the same for him. I feel like shame was the biggest attack for me. Like how, even as I'm telling you, like, how could I not have known? Like, Lord, like why couldn't you have told me earlier? Like, how was I so blind to this? And then even again, like reconciling all this time with our friends and thinking about what are they going to think? I remember I even had, it's like just this vision of me going into like to dinner with like all these people that we know. And like literally me going and just being like just so full of shame and embarrassed about like what he's done, how I didn't know, like we were in all this dysfunction and I didn't know it. And it's like, I really what we're talking about today. I feel like even in that moment, the Lord was like, this is not about what he's done. This is about what I'm doing and what he's done. But that was I feel like that was the biggest thing for me. It was like shame for me too, like on what has happened. And I remember even telling the Lord, like, I don't want this to be my story. Like, I didn't want this to be my story. I don't want this to be my story. And again, the Lord, it's like so many times, but it's like, he so clearly was like I write a beautiful story. He writes a beautiful story. And so it was this, Lord, this is your story. Even as we're testifying today, I'm like, this is about him. Like, this is about what he's done. This is his story. And it's like, who am I to withhold what he's done?
Clay, what was the biggest attack on you in this season?
It was, guilt, shame, condemnation. It's those little things like healing couldn't begin until it was all out in the open. And it's like, I was just in such deep partnership. Like, so she said 4 different times, literally each time I didn't tell the whole truth. It's like, it's so stupid. Like, I'm saying something and literally it's bringing her back down again. We make a little bit of progress, a few weeks, and then back down. I did that 4 times. And this is a normal thing that a lot of people that are coming into the open do. And my encouragement would be, just don't partner with this deep lie that like, this is the end. Like, you surely can't tell that final thing. It's like, think about everything that she already knows.
Yeah.
Like, what's one more?
Yeah.
And so
it truly is the best thing you can do. Like, whatever the consequences are, the best thing you can do is still to say it all, because it has happened, whether you've revealed it or not. That is the reality.
Yeah. And so coming fully clean. And then the biggest thing, infidelity, like me acting out with other women, was honestly easy to stop. It's like, logistically, it's easy. Like, she knows and I'm alive and I'm not dead. Like, I'm not doing that again. And then pornography was probably scared out of my system for about 6 months. And then that started to come back. And I started to deal with that again. And the Lord would not allow me to stay in hiding. Like, I've spent my entire life hiding, like struggling with pornography. And then literally I would just get caught. I remember
the Lord would tell me, like literally tell me. He would come home. I'd be like, do you have something to tell me? Like, I mean, this happened a good handful of times.
Maybe, but I was going to tell you.
Yeah, that was I was going to tell you. I'm like, okay.
Liar.
And, and so, but that was a huge thing, is just continually in my battle with pornography, which I would say in our healing process, it was probably a year before of accountability and me getting on the other side of that. But it's like, and then I would relapse, something would happen. And then in my same lie I'd partnered with in the past, like not telling her the whole truth, is like, I can't tell her this. And I remember there's one specific time where you found something somehow. I'm about to walk into a business meeting and you call me and you're like, have you been looking at, like, how? She couldn't understand, how could I possibly do this? I felt like pornography and me relapsing post all of this coming out was the thing that I would say almost ended us.
How did you find real freedom?
So I was talking about that altar moment that I was looking for, like, just take it away, God. And I have seen that. Like, I have seen individuals that legitimately have Saul to Paul conversions, like in a moment. And I felt like the Lord, what he showed me is like, I've had the head knowledge the entire time of like what I should or should not be doing, but yet I've made the conscious decision for years to not choose him. And he showed me one day, like, I'm teaching you to choose me again. And so it was this incremental process of accountability. I love the place that I was working at when I confessed and came honest with the CEO of the company at that time. He was so gracious to me and just allowed me. I kept my job, And he allowed me to be there and have a high paying executive salary, which was beautiful because it helped us in our healing process, because we went into lots of help with counseling and all different things. And he would let me, when I would go on business trips, I told one person that I worked with what was going on. He's a Christian. So I let him in on what was going on so I could bring this guy on trips with me. And it just got intense. I would go travel and I would call hotels beforehand and be like, hey, can you remove the TV before I get there? Good thing about staying at nice hotels is they just got to do what you tell them to do. But stuff like that, just intense accountability. I got connected. The Lord just started doing crazy stuff in our life, but I got connected with a group of old men, and I would meet at like 5 a.m. in this barn with these men over in South Lake. And these guys were just mentoring me, teaching me to hear the voice of God. And the Lord just had all these divine appointments of individuals that just helped me along the way. And that, the curriculum we're going through, the couple that was mentoring us, and he's like next level, like, hey, you got, until tomorrow at this time to tell Lindsey. And if you don't, I'm telling my wife and she can tell her. And it's like, take it easy, dude. And so lots of accountability, but that's what it took for me to create a scenario that I could start seeing some successes coming out of 20 years of addiction,
When did you get to the point where you got freedom in your heart over this situation?
It's actually funny. So kind of going through our classes, they kind of give you a timeline, right? They're like, maybe on average, it's 18 to 24 months. One of the things I told the Lord was, I was like, Lord, I will not rush past this. Like, I will not rush it, which I actually don't know if it's common when people are going through healing to be like, Lord, take your time with me. Like, I was literally not like, let's rush out of this. And really, like, something again happened with us where I felt I was very desperate, but also determined in that I was like, Lord, I will come out of this on the other side, like healed. Like, I will have a testimony. I just don't know what it's going to be. I was like, I don't know if that's with him. I don't know if it's not. And frankly, with all the things, I was kind of like, I don't care. Like, I was like, either it's him or it's not, but Lord, whatever you want to do. And so I kind of, again, I was almost like, they gave me this timeline. I was like, it's going to be at least that, I'm like, Lord, you take all the time you need. And I remember sitting in a counseling session, not only that, but we also receive like a couple words that things that are going to, take years, we're going to take months, and things that are going to take months are going to take weeks, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember sitting in my counseling session 10 months, a year in, and I was telling her, I was like, well, whenever I get on the other side of this, then whatever. I don't even know how I was going to finish it. And she was like, hold on. She was like, Lindsey, what do you mean when you get on the other side of this? And I just broke down, and I was like, I don't know what like aha moment I was waiting on, but the Lord was like, you are free to just continue walking with me. It wasn't this like, oh, I got to have him during all of this, which I think is also very common for people. You go through something hard and you're like, oh, the Lord is so near. Like, I've never encountered him like that before. It's like, but the reality is you can continue to encounter him like that every day. And I feel like even that part of the testimony of that, I feel like is mercy culture. We then start going to mercy culture and we're like, oh, I don't have to leave all that in this season. It's like I get to keep hearing God, and he gets to keep directing us. I mean, something we didn't even mention was like, we got pretty radical in like, I mean, when he says we're at the end of ourselves, we're like, we don't need anything. Like, we literally, like, we sold our cars, we sold our big dream house. We go rent this small little house so we can focus on our healing. Again, something I think even when we talk to couples now, like, people just sometimes aren't willing to do. They're like, my marriage is in this like really terrible spot, and my job, I'm away from my family all the time, but I'm not getting rid of that job. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, why not? Like, what are you doing? And not only that, I'm like, are you even asking the Lord what you should do with that?
Yep.
And so it's actually funny, even talking about his job, he stayed at that job for, it was over a year. Mm-hmm. Which, we're saying this is like the scene of the crime, this is like, he's traveling, this is where the things are happening. And I just remember even thinking like, I mean, he could do it at any job. He could do it anywhere. And it was just this like, but we're going to take steps so that he's not in this high level position anymore. So again, it's funny. People we know, we really didn't share it with anyone that we even knew. It was like, we kind of kept it with us and the people that were walking with us through it. And, but on the outside, people are like, what are y'all doing? Like, why are you selling this home? Why are you selling your cars? Why are you moving to this house in this part of town? Like, and we're just like, this is what the Lord's saying to do. And this is what we're going to do. And so
I left as an executive of a medical equipment company and went to work at a construction company here locally. And people are just like,
what are we doing?
what is going on with you guys? But it was, sorry, were you about to say something?
Sorry, I was just going to say part of that when we sold our house, we have this garage sale and we're getting rid of everything. I mean, Clay got rid of his tools. He still hasn't recuperated everything. You know, we're getting rid of our dishes. We're getting rid of everything too. We're like, who cares what? You can have all of our things. It's all worthless, you know? And you can share that part. But this guy comes.
Oh, yeah. So, and we had nice things. I was literally like, give me $5, take that box over there. You can go in our house and take anything you want, whatever you can get in that box. I regret a little bit of that. So anyways, we've just liquidated all of our stuff.
It's about 3 months.
Yeah. And Lindsey is at the rental house with the kids. And so it's at the end of the day of this garage sale. And this random guy shows up. I feel like this is one of the first, like one of those just loud God encounters. And this guy shows up with his daughters and he's like, hey, could I tell you something? And I was like, sure. And he was basically about to prophesy over me. And the way he said it, he said, you know, the Lord's had me on this journey where he speaks to me. And I just want to share with you what I think that he's saying. I was like, shoot, buddy. And he just started reading my mail, like the things that you're going through right now, the decisions that you're making. It's not just going to change you. It's going to change your kids and your kids' kids. And I just started weeping. And it was just this moment where we're right in the middle of just navigating and doing uncomfortable things that God is asking us to do. And, but it was just at that moment where I just felt so confirmed in like, okay, we're doing the right thing. And I remember going in and I call Lindsey, I'm crying and I'm just like laying on my back in the middle of our living room floor with boxes everywhere. And I'm just telling her about this guy. And so there's so many moments like that where God would, he's been so good to us. And literally since we walked through all this, since I made a decision to become fully known, he has just inserted himself in a crazy way to the extent where I'm like, God, does this end? And his answer to that is only if you want it to.
Yeah.
And so we're not in that season anymore, but we've literally just been walking that out since 2017. It began with all of this. Like that's what we stepped into.
It's so crazy how so many people resist sharing their testimony because they're afraid of what people will think, how people respond. And I'm reminded in the Gospel of John that a man tells his testimony and he gets kicked out of his church, chaos erupts, and the Bible says that Jesus came and found him. And I believe some of your greatest encounters with God come after the season of just your testimony and telling about your God encounters. And I wanted to tell your story because there's so many people that are still hiding. They're not bringing their sin into the light. They're not fully healed. And then some people are ashamed and they're not letting God tell their story. And the enemy will try to bring shame. But there's power in our testimony. And the Bible says to not be ashamed of the gospel, which literally is our encounters with God, the good news of Jesus. So after all this, I meet you guys 2 years into your healing journey, randomly run into you at a men's conference.
It was that was actually exactly 1 year.
Okay.
So the men's conference that I was at on D-Day, so it was exactly 1 year later. And I'm standing in line by myself at this men's conference, a lot better this year than the prior year. And I'm standing next to this guy and I'm like, I've seen this guy somewhere.
I think you asked me if I was the guy starting a church.
Yeah.
You end up being a part of our church launch. And
First interest night.
You were the official chair setter-upper. Literally, as I'm getting ready to go preach, getting in and out of suits, we're sweating together, setting up a church plant. And you guys just started faithfully serving at the church, just volunteer servants. And I loved that when I met with you for the first time one-on-one, you told me this. And you shared your story. And I remember thinking, like, what? Like, I had no idea that you were such a dirtbag.
It's true.
But I only knew you
Yeah.
into your journey with encountering God and really living for the Lord. Again, it reminded me of Heather. Like, you would have no idea of this life that she lived. So you guys start serving and you take over groups ministries and just serving groups ministries. And then the Lord starts speaking to us about having you guys do pastoral care. And we hear from the Lord, yes, you're supposed to. We ordain you guys as pastors. And then, I mean, who would think, this is wild. We're on an elders retreat asking God, you told us to go to Dallas. Who do you want? And the Lord starts speaking about the Ingrams. And what I love about this story is I really don't feel like Mercy Culture elders chose you. I feel like the Lord chose you. And then we said yes, and you guys said yes. And there's so many individuals that are trying to restore people to ministry or segue them and manipulate or kind of maneuver the process, almost like how they manage the ark and try to move the ark rather than fearing the Lord. They put the ark on a cart rather than letting it be carried, like letting God lead. And there was no intentionality. Hey, this is your pathway to leadership and let's get you here and take talented people. It was literally just your guys' surrendered hearts, you guys faithfully serving and God speaking. And so we never restored anyone to ministry. You were restored to Jesus.
Yeah.
And then he does those things.
Yes.
Because I meet pastors all the time that are struggling and, could God use me again? And I'm like, have you heard Clay's story? And look who God will use. But you look at the Bible, look at David and Moses and these stories of broken, fallen people that God chooses to use. You know it's God, because why tell those part of their story?
Yeah.
Like, God gets the glory out of this. This isn't a perfect couple that's never gone through anything. This was a broken, devastated scenario that truly only God gets the glory.
Yes.
I want to ask, to close with this, guys, is what would you say to the people that are struggling? The man that is where you were, you're hidden in the church, people don't know, you're hiding, but that moment of decision, what do you tell that person?
Yeah. So take courage. The Lord showed me that even with me being honest, because the lie that you're in partnership is like I was in partnership is I'm going to lose Lindsey. And if I lose Lindsey, I'm going to lose my daughters. They're not going to have a father. So therefore I can't possibly be honest with this. And that night when I told Lindsey, she was just numb and she just kind of mumbled these words out. She's like, I was already planning on getting the girls and going to Oklahoma for, a while. Like the thing that I was
Afraid of losing.
The enemy was already orchestrating it. Even if she was going to do that without knowing all of this. And so don't be afraid. If there's things in your past that are hiding, man, it is like, I can't tell you how to be fully known is, and yet Lindsey is still here. To be fully known for the first time in my life is the most freeing thing that anyone can ever experience. Yes, we had a healing journey, and yes, we're working through lots of things, but I grew up in a Christian household, but I really believe that I comprehended what the love of Jesus is in that moment. I'm like, oh, this is the cross. This is what I did to you. I know we take communion in Dallas, but like we do it every week, but like I can't get to the end of it because I have been forgiven so much. And you get to, if you're hiding something, you're not allowing your spouse access to love that part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, when you come into the light, it'll change everything. Like God, because we stay in hiding because of our pride. And what do we know about our pride? When we're in pride, we literally are standing in opposition to God. And so when you make the decision to come into the light, God will just come in a powerful way and just start orchestrating things, even in the middle of your pain. Because when this happens, it's the deepest form of intimacy when you become fully known. And that deep form of intimacy will often cause a short-term instability, but I promise you there's beautiful God encounters and intimacy with your spouse that you've never even known that's waiting for you, and it's on the other side of that.
Lindsey, anything else that's in your heart that you want people to know?
I think just to his point, I feel like as the person that you'd be telling, like they want to know. And I feel like by withholding it, almost feel like you're withholding an encounter with Jesus with them. Like I said, I encountered Jesus like I never had either. And it's like I would do it again every time. Like I would, it's funny, we say it's like we would, but we're grateful for it. Like we're grateful for all the things that he did. I'm also just reminded of, it was about 2 or 3 years before he told me I received this prophetic word. And it was this word about, I don't know what's coming against you, but it's going to basically change everything. Like your life will no longer be built on the sand. It'll be built on the rock. And I remember at the time being like, well, what is that? And I just like put it away. A couple years goes by and he like shares this with me. And I was like, this is what that was. So what's crazy is at the end of this word, they had given me a scripture in Hosea 2:14, 2:15. This is when last year Pastor Heather comes to Dallas and she's prophesying over us and she's prophesying over the campus. And she was like, the verse that I hear for Mercy Culture Dallas is Hosea 2:14. And I just felt so like, Lord, like you knew all along, you knew 2 years before this was going to happen. Like you really have done all of this, like the goodness of God. Like, it's like, I don't deserve the goodness of God. And, I'm just so grateful. So
it's amazing. Clay, would you pray over the people that are watching that they would encounter God, find freedom, and come into the light like you have?
Would love to. Lord, we love you. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your faithfulness. And God, we just declare that your word is true and your ways are true. And God, I pray for every person that consumes this information, God, I pray that you would give them the boldness and the courage to become known, to step into the light, to receive your love, your mercy, God. I pray for every person on the receiving end, God, would you give them your grace? And Father, I pray that you would plunder hell because of this, Father.
Yeah.
We know that that you come in strong when we make a decision to become known. So Lord, do it, Father. I pray that men would have boldness, that women would have boldness, and God, that there would just be a different level of intimacy and encounter with you because of it. God, we say that we trust you and we love you. And Jesus, I thank you for your kindness. I thank you for your mercy towards me and towards everyone. We just receive it every day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. The goal of the Spiritual Leadership Podcast is that you will spiritually grow. With every episode released, you'll be equipped with a leadership guide. In every guide, we will review the information that was covered, reflect by asking questions to yourself, to God, and your teams, and apply what you've learned. It's going to be short, sweet, effective, and to the point. I don't want you just to listen to this podcast. I want you to be able to immediately apply it to yourself and the people you lead. So text podcast to 59090 and download the leadership guide with every podcast episode we drop. If you desire to spiritually grow, I want to invite you to join me on this journey. Subscribe to @MercyCulture, or you could follow me on social @Landon Schott. If you value this content, I would really appreciate if you would share it with a friend. I'm Landon, and thank you for joining me on Spiritual Leadership, where we're helping leaders become spiritual leaders.